On today's Locked On Jayhawks, Kansas, Missouri, border war, border showdown, whatever it's called, rivalry happening this Saturday. We're previewing the game on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can hear me as well, Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence with Rock Chalk Sports Talk. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast. You can also like and subscribe to our show and find us on our YouTube page. We yesterday talked, does KU have enough three-point shooting, the identity of the team, little KU football. We broke down yesterday Jeff Grimes, the new offensive coordinator. Find those with Locked On Jayhawks. We're previewing Kansas, Missouri on today's edition, though, of the show with the game set for Saturday. First, this episode of the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy with PrizePicks. Kansas takes on Missouri. It's a Saturday game in Allen Fieldhouse at 4:15. Pregame will start at 2:30 on at KLWN and 105.9 KISS. So obviously our top storylines will start there, head to the Missouri scouting report, matchups of the game, and then players to watch, player matchups of the game too. Our top storyline here, I mean, it's a rivalry game, right? I mean, anytime you get Kansas and Missouri playing each other in any sport, it becomes obviously a very meaningful game because, you know, of the history here. This isn't just one of those college sports rivalries where it's, hey, we've been playing for 100 years, which makes it a rivalry, which those absolutely are. There's real historical, stuff here with burning down cities, killing people from other areas, right? That makes this game mean so much to so many people. And there's so much vitriol involved in this rivalry. So many stories you'll hear about, players getting spit on or jars of urine being thrown at play, right? Like there's so many things that come in. Anytime you play Missouri, it gets the highest alert. And that is the challenge for Bill Self, is to relay that to some of the guys that maybe don't know that type of thing, like Johnny Furphy, Hunter Dickinson. Maybe you don't know why Missouri is such a rivalry. So you have maybe former players come in, you have speakers come in, you have current players who have maybe played in it before, like Dajuan Harris, I'm sure is able to kind of speak on that. Now, as far as how this rivalry has gone, the series has gone lately, well, since they renewed it, because obviously, your final meetings in 2012 saw Missouri win their home game and then Kansas win on the epic comeback with the T-Rob block. Since you've restarted it since then, Kansas has dominated both games. 102-65 was the score in 2021 in Lawrence. Chris Tehan hits the three that puts you over 100. Crowd goes bananas. They were into it the whole game. Then you go into Columbia last year. Good Missouri team. They ended up making the second round of the NCAA tournament, and you just blasted them. 95-67 in Columbia. That was one of KU's best games of the season. Shot the three well, handled the ball well against their press, and were able to get open shots. He defended really well. And Kansas was able to silence the crowd early and often as they almost won by 30. So you combine it together, and that means that Kansas collectively in the two games has won by, 65 points between the two? So you have dominated. Can you do that again in this one? Beyond that, another storyline, Thomas Robinson's having his jersey retired. I think there was some talk that they were trying to get his jersey retired for the 2021 version against Missouri in Lawrence, but maybe it just didn't work out scheduling wise, and maybe they're like, you know what, we're going to host them again in 2 years. Let's just wait till then. Because to do it against Missouri feels so fitting. It feels so right. I mean, how many times are we going to see the block on the scoreboard at Allen Fieldhouse for the game? So having his jersey retired, really cool. But also, I mean, it's just a cool honor for Thomas Robinson. Well-deserved. First-team All-American, was a National Player of the Year candidate, took Kansas to the national title game, and before that had a couple good years as like your bench big, reserve big, coming off the bench. Great career for Thomas Robinson, and I think an all-time favorite among KU fans, not just because of his story and everything that happened while he was at KU, from the off-the-court to the on-the-court stuff, but he was just so good at getting the crowd pumped up and just made such impactful plays and screamed to the crowd. Just such a fun player to watch. Beyond this, another top storyline, Dajuan versus Missouri, because Dajuan is from Columbia. So I think every time you play them, that becomes an interesting storyline. How did KU get this kid? Obviously, he was committed to Missouri State, ended up coming to KU, had to redshirt his first year to get his academics straight. Since then, he's been an excellent student so far, KU. And anytime he gets a chance to kind of shove it or show it to the guys in Missouri. But you also have the added Parker Brown part of this, a former transfer from, Missouri too. And obviously Christian and Parker's mom playing at Missouri, that kind of added tie-in as well. This is also another chance for Kansas to add another Power 5 victory and add to your resume a little bit more. This wouldn't be a quad 1 win, but we'll see where it all comes in a couple months here. Maybe this ends up being like a quad 2 opportunity or something like that. And for Missouri, they're looking for their signature win. You go into Allen Fieldhouse, you win in Lawrence, all of a sudden Missouri feels like, hey, we've got a real chance to do something special this season. As far as the Missouri scouting report, they are 7-2 on the season. They have their 2 losses. One of them was a 15-point loss to Memphis, who is like a top 40 team. And then one was the most notable one, which was a 1-point loss to Jackson State, a team who was in the mid-200s on KenPom, a very weird loss. I think Jackson State entered that game at like 0-5 or something and then beat Missouri. As far as their best wins, they beat Wichita State by 10 points. That's a team who's just outside the top 100. Kansas will play them in a few weeks at the T-Mobile Center. Minnesota, who's just outside the top 100, they beat them by 2 points. And then their best win was winning at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a team just inside the top 60. They beat them by 7 points on the road. So this is a solid Missouri team, but it's not as good of a Missouri team as last year, and it's not one that, as of right now, is being seen as an NCAA tournament team. But still, Power 5 opponent, top 100 opponent, you still have to play well. Otherwise, things are going to be too close for comfort, right? They do have a slow tempo rating, grade, whatever you want to call it, on KenPom. But when you look at how they play offensively, they are one of the faster teams in the country offensively. So what that tells me is they try to run fast. They try to get in transition offensively, but defensively, maybe there are certain things they're doing that are slowing down the opposing offense. So that could be unique defenses. We saw them, press at times against Kansas last year. I've seen them, throw out like 1-3-1 or different zones at different teams at times over the past couple of years that maybe they're doing that. It's causing teams to slow down because they have to work the zone more intricately. It's kind of like a weird thing to describe their tempo. Both offense and defense for KenPom for Missouri right now are ranked just outside the top 80. They're 80th overall on KenPom for what it's worth, at least as of time of recording. 83rd on offense, 84th on a defense. Pretty balanced between the two. Now, things that they're good at. They're good at 2-point offense. They're good at 3-point offense, both in terms of efficiency. They're above 35%. And they are top 25 in the country in the amount of shots that they're taking being from 3-point range. So they take a lot of them and they shoot them pretty efficiently. Free throw shooting has been a strength for them in terms of the percentage. They're forcing turnovers at a high rate so far. They're getting steals, which is a big reason why they're forcing those turnovers. And they're blocking a good amount of shots. All those are things that they're good at. Things that they've kind of struggled with so far: offensive and defensive rebounding. They have not been a great offensive or defensive rebounding team to this point in time. So those are certainly things to watch in this game. They haven't got to the foul line a ton. And the other categories that I haven't mentioned are more things that they either range from below average to above average at. But those are the things that they're kind of best at or worst at to both sides of the thing. Now, as far as the personnel for Missouri, it's mostly smaller guards throughout the roster. They'll play like a wing at the 4, and then they have a gigantic center in Connor Vanover, who's 7'5" at the center position. Aiden Shaw, who's 6'8", will play some 4. He'll play some 5. Jordan Butler is another backup center. He's a 7-footer for them too. So they have size at the 5, more of a wing at the 4, smaller guards at the 1 through 3. Sean East is lethal at the point guard position for them. He's put up almost 17 points per game, 3.5 assists per game. He's shooting 58% from the floor and 62% from 3-point range early in this season. So Sean East, definitely one that KU has to check. Noah Carter has been really good for them. He's scoring over 12 points per game, around 6 rebounds per game. He's a matchup problem for a lot of teams. I do think KU has, because he's like a 6'6" bowling ball, 235-pound wing. Good news for Kansas with KJ Adams. You have kind of the perfect matchup to go up against it, like an underside or kind of a wing, strong bowling ball type player. Okay, that's perfect for KU, right? They've got lots of shooters, though. Nick Honors averaging 12 points per game, 45% from 3. Caleb Grill, career 34% on high volume from 3, former Iowa State player. And Tamar Bates, 44% from 3. He was a good shooter at Indiana before, shooting it well from 3 so far from them. Even Connor Vanover can shoot 3s for them at the 5 position. So a lot of players that can stretch you out, and an interesting team that you're going up against in Missouri on Saturday. We're going to continue on matchups of the game and players to watch with this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of Locked On is brought to you by PrizePicks. With basketball season here, you can now pick basketball, college basketball, NBA. You can also do some of their combo projections. You can pick, a couple college basketball players, a couple NFL players, or you can go to their specials page, which is a page created for combo projections. So, for instance, they'll have LeBron James or they'll have Luka Doncic 3-point attempts or 3 points made plus Justin Watson receptions. I don't think they're actually going to look into Justin Watson, but you know what I mean? And it'll be like more or less of 6.5 or something like that. So PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player's rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an insurance policy. So that's something really cool they do. You can go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege and use code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege with code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Matchups of the game. Get to our players matchup, players to watch on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you to tuning into each and every episode. Thank you to the everydayers, and you can check out our stuff on KU hiring a new offensive coordinator or some more KU football talk in yesterday's episodes of Locked On Jayhawks. But our first matchup here, KU's 3-point defense against the Missouri shooting. So as I talked about, Missouri shoots a ton of 3-point shots. They're one of the top 25 teams in the country in the amount of their shots that they're getting, the percentage of them coming from 3-point range. And they're doing so at a good efficiency. I mean, over 35% from three. If you're a team that shoots them less, you'd like to see a little higher efficiency, but the fact that they're taking them that high volume and they're shooting them that well speaks to a good shooting team. KU's 3-point defense has been solid so far this season. We've seen moments, though, like the Kentucky game, the UConn game, where for stretches of play, like the opposition has gotten hot from outside, which that can just happen. To be clear, like 3-point defense is one of those things where as much as you can put an emphasis as a team on chasing teams off the 3-point line, of making sure shots are contested. More contested shots equals lower tendencies from three. You can also put more of a tendency on, we're not going to double in the post, right? We're going to play more direct man on the outside. Villanova does this. And if you drive by us, We're not going to give help because we're going to try to take down. There are schematic things you can do to mitigate the threes against you taken in your 3-point defense. There absolutely are. But there still is a certain standpoint of 3-point defense that is a bit of luck, because once the ball's out of your hand, there's nothing really you can do there. And you can play great defense on a 3 and they can still make it. We saw that with Tristan Newton. So it is kind of a mix of skill, maybe perimeter length on the outside, schematics, and a little bit of luck there. But one thing to note is that KU has done a really good job defensively not giving up corner threes, meaning that they're in the 94th percentile in the most threes allowed in the country above the break. What is above the break? There's corner threes, and then there's above the break. Above the break is where it's kind of turning around. Like, this is more indicative in the NBA, where the 3-point line is geometrically different, but it's basically non-corner threes are above the break. Okay. And so what that means is teams are taking a ton of the percentage of the shots that are coming against Kansas are coming above the break threes, but they're not a bunch of corner threes. And corner threes are usually the most open ones and the easiest ones to make. Teams are only shooting 30.7% from three against KU on the above the break threes. So they haven't shot super well from them above the break. I think that's kind of a strategy thing for KU. Missouri, meanwhile, is in the 98th percentile at taking corner threes. They're hitting their corner threes at a 45.8% clip. So Missouri, when they're getting corner threes, is hitting them at basically 46%. When Missouri's getting other threes, above the break threes, non-corner threes, Missouri is only shooting those threes at 30.5%. That is a wide gap between what they're shooting in corner threes above the break threes. Good news for KU. They've done a good job preventing corner threes, and they've been more comfortable with teams taking above the break threes, which actually kind of favors KU in this matchup. And last year's matchup saw a big advantage for KU in 3 balls. They went 10 of 22 from 3 compared to Missouri going 6 of 20 from 3. But Jalen Wilson, Grady Dick are gone. They combined to go 6 of 12 for 3 from KU in that game. So the 3-point shooting certainly going to be an interesting matchup. in this game. Number 2 is KU's ball handling versus the Missouri defense and ball pressure. Kansas is 132nd in turnover rate offensively, so above average. Missouri is 58th in turnover rate defensively. They are top 15 in the country in steal rate defensively. They get a lot of steals. Last year, though, once you blew by the press and were able to avoid the steals, you were able to get easy baskets because of it. If you can do that again, you'll get easy baskets again. I don't know how much Missouri's going to press. I don't know how much Missouri's going to play weird defenses like a 1-3-1, certain zones. But you would think with the lights turned up, Dajuan Harris, this would be an area you can help in. Kansas is number 1 in the country in assist rate, so that should help here. Last year, Kansas was 24-14 assist to turnover ratio. Missouri was 8-21. There was a big difference there. Can Kansas force turnovers too? I guess becomes interesting. But can you hold on to the basketball? Can you avoid a high turnover game against a team who wants to force you to do just that? Number 3, battle of the bench. Missouri plays their bench at pretty high minutes so far this season. Meanwhile, KU's bottom 30 in the country per KenPom. It's almost a certainty that Missouri's bench is going to have more points. Like if you just look at bench points at the end of the game, Missouri's going to have more. I feel very confident in that because they play their bench a lot more. But in the limited minutes that KU gets from their bench, can it hold its own? And furthermore, can you get those flash plays like Johnny Furphy hitting a couple threes, Parker Brown making a dunk or two, Nick Timberlake maybe making a three, Jamar McDowell making an impact, right? In the limited minutes you're going to give your bench, can they provide you positive impact since their bench is going to probably give them more than yours will overall? As far as our player matchup, Hunter Dickinson versus Connor Vanover. Vanover is the 7'5" center for Missouri. He is a good shot blocker. He also is the team's best defensive player overall if you go by Evan Miyakawa's DBPR. So he's been really good. Now, I know he's only playing 12 minutes per game, so it's like, how can this be the best player matchup when he's going to only be out there for a couple stretches? He has been up to 19 minutes per game over the last 2 games. Maybe that's more indicative. Maybe gets to around 20 minutes per game in this one, even then, but still. On the other side, it's not just that Hunter Dickinson is KU's go-to offensive player and he's a good shot blocker and he's tall, and how is that going to affect him there? It's that Connor Vanover has shown the ability to space from 3, 32% for his career from 3 on actually pretty high volume, all things considered. Like last year when he was at Oral Roberts before he transferred into Missouri, he shot 4 threes per game as a 7'5" center. So he is willing to take them in high volume. And if you don't get out there and guard them, he'll gladly take a couple and maybe he shoots 3 and he hits 2 of them. And that can be the difference in a game. We're going to get to our players to watch, finishing up here with Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Players to watch for Kansas. Obviously, we mentioned Hunter Dickinson there with the matchup with Vanover. Dajuan Harris, as we talked about, he's from Columbia. This is kind of a chip on your shoulder game, I'd imagine. But it's also, he is a really, really tough matchup. Sean East is a tough matchup to deal with for him on the defensive side of the court. I think you feel good, though, if you're KU, that you get to say, okay, their best offensive player, we have the Big 12 defensive player of the year who's going to be guarding him. But also East and the backup point guard for Missouri have not been great defenders so far this season for KU, or for Missouri. And so for KU, Dajuan Harris might have an advantage of if he can be aggressive in this game. If he is aggressive in this game, and I don't mean that he has to be Kentucky aggressive, scoring 23. Can you put up 8 to 10 points in this game and play good defense? I think Dajuan Harris absolutely can, and I expect him to have a good game here. Kevin McCullar is the other one. He's on an offensive heater right now, just put up 25 points earlier this week against UMKC. He's shooting the ball well. Over the last 2 games, 5 of 6 from 3, 11 of 11 at the foul line. For the season, he's at 39% from 3, and he's scoring over 19 points per game. He's also going to be matched up mostly, I would think, with Caleb Grill and Tamar Bates, who both are guys who could play the kind of 3 for them. He's going to have a size advantage against either one. And we've seen KU be able to throw him in the post and post him up here over the last couple games, as we've seen Bill Self do with Ochai Agbaji, Christian Brown, Jalen Wilson in the past. And they're starting to use that more. I think they could use it a couple times in this game too, maybe get some easy buckets, continue his offensive. Grill and Bates haven't been known for being great defensive players. I don't think either's been known for being like a bad defensive player, but I think Kevin McCullar can have a good game once again in this one against Missouri. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. We'll recap whatever happens in the KU-Missouri game later this weekend. You can find any of our past shows with Locked On Jayhawks anywhere you get your podcast and on our YouTube page. We'll see you next time with LOJ.